Good morning, all, and welcome to this week's Jump Recruitment discussion, which is all about finishing the year off with a bang and hopefully starting the year off in 2023 on the front foot. How people see the end of the year is really simple. I also think people sort of see the end of the year as eggnog, family, holidays, parties, eating, shopping, Santa, gifts, giving, relaxing. So it's a wonder that people sort of do switch off sometimes as we come towards the end of the year. So let's look at it in a positive way. Look at how we can end the year in a really big way, and then also look at how we can then sort of enter 2023. So I want to give some stats, and these stats are sort of quite interesting that we come across. In Q4, over the quarter, they reckon 26% of businesses intend to increase recruitment, which has actually dropped from 31% in Q2. During the same period, though, almost a quarter, 23% of businesses intend to increase their recruitment spend for specialist roles, which sort of demonstrates that skill shortages still remain and staffing or vacancies for specialist staff is still a high priority from there. So there's lots of stuff that's going on. Positively, though, over half the employers, 53%, are confident they will be hiring and will need people in Q4, and that's an increase of 50% on last quarter, if you can get that in your head. Okay. The cost of living, though, is that going to impact Q4 and 2023? 53% of small businesses expect to either stagnate, downsize, or even fold. 74% of SMEs fear inflation, and the rising energy costs are a key threat to their business. And a report from Energy Live News has revealed that as many small businesses are struggling to stay afloat, they anticipate that around about 53% of all small businesses, as I said, will either stagnate, downsize, or fold. And as a result of the energy crisis, CIPS also report that 74% of SME businesses said energy bills, inflation, rising costs, and long-term concerns of their business. And as a result, they see startups failing. And if we think between January and March 2022, there was 205,000 new corporations set up, of which 150,000 dissolved in the UK. That's 73% failure rate just from businesses that were set up in January and March of this year. What they also reckon is that 10% of new startups this year will not be around in 5 years. So a bit of sort of distress there when you start to look at it. But then we start to look at some good things. I'm going to give you some sort of good news as well.
Good, because I was getting really depressed, Harry.
Good, I'm going to give you some good news. It's about New Year, it's about Christmas. Oh, sure. Okay, more than 1 in 10, 13% of employers say that old workers are retiring and leaving a skills gap, which is good for recruitment. This is proven when considering the views of staffs of over 50, over a quarter of them say that they are considering leaving their roles for early retirement. Interesting, though, the main reason why 55 and over are looking to leave their role is due to lack of job satisfaction. And this is what Dave gave a quote last week, and I wanted to investigate it, that gives us real new sort of hope of what's going on. What Dave was talking about last week, he said in 1963-64 was the highest year for children being born in the UK. There was 1 million children born that year in the UK. The lowest, actually, Dave, was in the mid-70s, and we thought it was the mid-80s, and it was just under 650,000 children were born, so almost a drop of 40%. The highest since that date was 800,000 in 2012, and that's dropped back to 680,000 in 2020. So what it says is the shortage in the labour force plus Brexit means there's a massive potential for recruitment to grow, because what we're going to see is there's still more jobs out there than there are people to fill those jobs. So it's all about, I think, having a growth mindset, because there's growth in our market, because people are still going to be looking for people, especially when the jobs outweigh the supply. So there's obviously a great opportunity for recruitment to come in. So if you think simply look at it at the moment, from the lowest to the highest, the working population has dropped by 35% since the 1960s. So this is an opportunity for us to capitalize, because if we can find the candidates, then we can certainly grow our marketplace and take market share, rather than being the barometer for recession when the market starts to drop. So this week we have Dave and Heather. As we saw, they've already been in there getting lively with the discussion. So let's look. So here's a question, without stating the obvious, because I think sometimes we do state the obvious far too much. So without stating the obvious, Dave, okay, what would be the most important thing you would focus on now, between now and the end of the year?
Is that to me, H?
That's to both of you. You can start it off though, Dave.
Okay, I tell you what, I'll go slightly left field then, in terms of a conversation and focus. But given that we've got 7 weeks, I think something like that, to the end of the year. Obviously, there's customers and there's your staff and all of that. I would begin, if you haven't already, to have a very intelligent alignment conversation with your shareholders or your investors, and if you run a business together, with your business partners or your husband or your wife, just to make sure that they are in the same place as you, or that you're in the same place as they are, as you come towards the end of the year. Because I think alignment is really important. All those stats are great, Howard, and it gives us that encouragement that there's growth to go for. But you may have an investor, an outside investor, that may have a percentage of your business. You may have a finance provider. You may have there may be 2 or 3 of you running the company together, and often we don't have those conversations with those type of people. So how are you? How are you getting on? Are we going in the right direction? Is this still something that interests you? And particularly if it is a husband and wife, partner, boyfriend, girlfriend, whatever, particularly if you're running it with your business partner you're related to. Sometimes those conversations don't take place. So I would encourage anybody who is running their business to make sure that if they're running it with somebody else, that they're having conversations with those people about alignment and how they are getting ready for 2023.
Okay.
Interesting, nice. Dave. Nice, I like that.
Nice. Not usual at all. I like that one. For me, it would be actually an opportunity. So despite the depression of some of those statistics, Howard, which you did pull it back at the end there. Well done.
Merry Christmas.
I do think we have to see that there is opportunity in this. So for me, I would want to focus my whole team, on the opportunity that exists. Because if they are listening to the radio, if they are looking at the newspapers, website news, anything, they are going to be drawn into this belief that we're heading for a recession. And whilst I do think there are turbulent economic waters ahead, and all the data that you said, Howard, is that it's true. The reality is that recruitment, talent acquisition around the world is bucking that trend at the moment. That's true. It's not just in the UK; it's everywhere. Because for the very reason that you said, there is a talent shortage. And so even in a challenging market, there are many organizations who cannot find the talent that they need. And they are more and more looking to deal with genuine consultancies who can help solve their talent acquisition problems. And that problem isn't going away despite the turbulent market. So I think for me, I would be focusing on opportunity, talking up the opportunity, and not letting the leadership of the business and your managers change the expectations about grasping that opportunity because of what they're hearing with statistics and the news.
I think I posted something out on the weekend that was talking about growth mindset, and talked about those companies that set growth targets, but with a growth mindset, not just setting big targets and then destroying people. That in 2007 to 2008, those companies grew by 20%. That set good, sensible growth targets, but also implemented a growth mindset right across their business. They also, after 2009, recovered 50% quicker than the rest of the market. So it says if you have a growth mindset and you look at the market, even in the darkest market that we've ever seen, which was the 2008 sort of collapse, there is opportunity in those if you have the right mindset for that. And I think you're right in what both you're saying. And I think when I sort of looked at this, I was starting to look at how I would motivate my team, because to me it was about the same thing, getting everyone on the right page and getting everyone with the growth mindset. And to me, I'd be digging into the team data and looking out, what requirements are we filling and which requirements do we fill quickly? Because we're looking at the end of Q4 and to start to burst into 2023, we've got to start to look at those requirements that we can fill and invoice by the end of Q4, but also look at the pipeline that we're building for 2023. And to me, that goes back into looking at the data and looking at what is actually happening in the data from there. And I think we've got to start to think now, if we start to trust the data that we have and we start to trust what is actually moving around us, then, and we were talking about this yesterday, weren't we, Heather, about people not trusting the obvious that's in front of you because they just don't want to see that. If you want to trust the data that you've got and you start to work on that data, you will see opportunity in all sorts of different areas. And that's the bit that your staff want to see. They want to see the opportunity, want to see that, because you're right, they're being bombarded by everywhere else. Woe is me, woe is me, woe is me. We want to say, actually, who is me? Where are we going for? So to me, that's what I'd start to look for. So if we look at that, everyone has a focus. And so I suppose what to you is obvious might not be obvious to somebody else. So if you looked at now and said, what's the obvious thing that you would actually implement now to finish the year off with a bang, what would you be focusing on?
For me, clients that make quick decisions. Because I don't think we have the time in our sector and in our business to wait while clients decide whether or not they want to do interviews. I think the moment you capture the requirement, your consultants have to have that intelligent conversation with, right, if I find you the CVs, which days are you available to interview the candidates? I'm talking purely, obviously, about our businesses rather than the people running our businesses, but it's that conversation, work with clients that value what you do and recognize that we're coming into a busy period. We all want some time off, I'm sure. So therefore, it is really important to get deals over the line, to find people jobs that you can invoice, as you said, Howard, before the end of the year, if your business is driven by the calendar. And that's a separate conversation, maybe for another day, as to whether your business should be driven by the calendar or whether it should be driven by the tempo that's in the market. So therefore, December becomes just another month. But if you are driving towards the end of the year and the end of December, try to get your consultants to work on work with clients that value what you do, that will support you if you find the right candidates, and that will make decisions quickly to get people on board.
Before you jump in there, Heather, I do love the way that we prep for these meetings, because we'll talk about the calendar in the year and what does it sync and should it not a bit later on in this conversation. But one thing I will say though, Dave, on that, and this is the bit that you've got to get right on focusing on clients that make quick decisions. The average time to make a permanent placement in the UK has dropped from 8.5 weeks to 6.2 weeks.
Right.
Interesting.
So it says clients are now starting to recognize that they need to move quickly in the marketplace. So yes, those that move extremely quickly, and that means that you can invoice, and if the candidate is available, you can make the placement and potentially invoice this side of Christmas if you make the right move.
If you're driven by the calendar, you've got till the end of next week.
End of next week, basically, yeah, to make your placements. But that's the average. But there's lots of people that are below average and above average, isn't there?
And there'll be lots of candidates, or say lots of candidates. There aren't lots of candidates for any role, I don't think, but there will be some candidates that are available almost immediately that could be placed and could start before the year ends.
And that's the question about then, do you change your invoice terms from when start date or when offered? Because there's another way of doing and getting your invoices in early. Heather, sorry, we were digressing there.
Well, I think an obvious focus that you'd expect to hear from me is about your people. So it's that remembering that over the Christmas period, if you have a break between Christmas and New Year, it is a time for reflection for everybody. We do think about what we're doing with our careers and our lives, and we make decisions. So, you know, inevitably there can be an uptick in resignations when people come back. So remember, that's a possibility, as well as that being an opportunity for us as recruitment consultants, remembering that piece about retention. So focusing in the run up to the end of the year on actually putting some effort into career reviews, planning, development activities with our teams in the run up. So not getting so focused on closing out the year that we forget to look forward into next year with our teams and make sure they understand where their career's going next year, so that their reflection is about staying with us and not about moving on.
I think this is, this is the obvious question. If we went back to the last question, digging into that team data and looking at what's happening and which jobs you can fill quickly and which jobs you can't, leads me to start to think then what I'd be focusing on. I'd be looking at my client base. Who's going to stop recruiting? Who's going to flatline next year? And who's going to potentially grow? And this means having an in-depth conversation with your clients now. So getting out and meeting your clients now and getting to understand what that is, because that will give you a view of what your potential gap might be between what you've set as a budget for next year or what you need to do to finish off the end of your financial year, wherever you're going on that. And it'll see the gap that you need to bridge as we enter 2023. So we need to be building, I think, deeper relationships with our clients. We need to understand what they actually want from us now and in the new year. And so that means, should we be creating different services? Should we be selling different recruitment services to them? And that game goes back to training and developing your staff. It's a great opportunity to train and develop your staff. And I think when we start to look at target clients, so you can target clients that you are already billing, that we know we've got a 70% chance of actually billing more out of if we think they're going to be growing. But that means also we can start to create target client lists of which clients look like that client that is recruiting, and we can start targeting the market where we think we're going to make money from, rather than just having that, just make a BD call, just make a BD call. We need to get laser focused on our BD, I think, and we need to get even more laser focused on our client penetration now with the clients that we already have. And so I think I'd be looking at, which clients are going to stop, which clients are going to flatline, and which clients are going to potentially growing, and then getting out and meeting those clients and finding out what they're up to and what they're going to be doing now to the end of the year and towards the start of the new year as it comes in. Okay. It's interesting that we were talking just before, we were talking about booking the jump Christmas party. Okay, which is a massive reveling session with the four of us, all with one party hat and one blowing popper. So
we know how to live.
We do.
And we share the party hat.
We do. We'll be sharing it. But this year, I do actually hope that the season of good cheer actually comes back in some form of normality. And I think that means clients will be having, the usual end of year party, Christmas party. Employees will be taking, their last leave if your annual leave goes from January to December. So what we tend to find is when we get towards December, your clients are hard to get hold of. You might be short-staffed. So how do you actually plan? Because I think this is going to be the first time it's going to be like that for the last 2 or 3 years. It hasn't been like that because of COVID, etc. So how should we be planning to negate that?
Just slightly topically, I think the answer clearly is being shown to us by our elected representatives. And I think the answer is to go and decide to sack off your job and join the jungle. And, let's go, and I'm a celebrity, get me out of there. Just that's what I do. Sorry, being slightly facetious there, Dave. I'll let you give a proper answer.
Yes, and if Matt Hancock is the definition of a celebrity, we're all in trouble.
I'll tell you what, though, I'm going to watch this season. I can't wait to watch him being forced to do all the bush trials.
You just hope he gets bitten, don't you? A lot, every day.
He will. Everything horrible is going to be.
Back onto recruitment, though, guys. No political.
I'll tell you what I used to do, H. I used to, when we had the team in London, we used to find out when our clients were having their Christmas party, and we used to send them. They used to get a little party pack, which was the little popper things that you pull out, and the hats. And we used to send them to say, enjoy your Christmas party from all at Spring. Spring London office. So we had, I don't know, we were billing 60 or 70 different clients, something like that, across the floor. And it was a little reminder that we liked them and that we valued them. And, you know, I can guarantee you that probably of those 70 clients, 69 wouldn't have done anything with the hats and the poppers other than leave them on the desk. But we just wanted to know two things. One, when their Christmas party was, because if it was a Thursday, we knew the Friday would be a more difficult day and it wasn't worth calling them. And two, just to have an engagement with them. So that's one way of finding out what's happening. And as you said, Howard, it's the first time in 3 years that we're going to be able to enjoy proper Christmas parties. So if you're looking to develop stronger relationship with your clients, just ask them, what do you do for Christmas? When are you having it? And if you want to send them something or a note or an email, or whatever it is, just something where there's some engagement from you to them, I think is always a good thing.
Heather, a non-political point of view?
I've only got facetious answers today, I'm afraid.
Right, moving on then.
Send them a link to ITV Hub and say, do not vote for this man.
I think we've got to be honest and sort of confront the issue. I think if we look at this, and we keep talking about how our relationships are with clients, and we do sessions on, you know, what your client journey looks like and what your relationship is with your client. You know, if your client's ghosting you at this time of year, it sort of demonstrates that you haven't really got a truly deep relationship with that client. They're not picking up the calls to you.
Yeah.
And therefore, you know, you've got to start to sort of measure that and think, you know, if my clients aren't picking up the calls and it's now taking what normally takes 6 weeks to fill a job, it's now taking 8 weeks and 10 weeks because of Christmas. You know, it says that they haven't got the urgency to work with you and you haven't got that in-depth relationship. So again, it goes back to our point before. It goes about building client relationships and developing that client relationship. And it was interesting, we were talking to I was talking to a client last week, and we were on a training course helping them sort of develop their relationship with one of their clients. And we sort of talked about that, you know, you sort that conversation piece with them. And the next sort of point is the client sees value in working with you, that they think that you're going to do right for them, and you seeing the value working with the client that they're going to see right for you. And what pins it all together is logic. You only feel like that when you see the logical answer of what you're trying to provide to the client, and the client sees that as a logical, you know, process, and that it will actually get them to where their end goals need to be. So I think we need to start to think about how we make our relationships with our clients more deeper, but more logical in the client's sense of point of view. You know, why are they using us? What are they using us for? And I think that's really important to look at that. The flip side of that is holidays and holiday rollovers and stuff like that. You know, we know this year has been really, really busy. And I'm thinking, you know, if I was at, you know, when I was at CP, you know, you couldn't go beyond the end of the year with your holidays. You couldn't take them forward. And therefore, loads of people were cramming loads of holidays in. So December was like a ghost town in the offices. To me, I'd be rolling those holidays over to the end of Q1. So to allow people to take them, so there's no rush, because this is going to be a really big part of the year, I think, and it's part of finishing the year off with a bang, but setting the year up. So actually, I'd be looking at how I can sort of change my holiday rota so it doesn't cause this problem at this time of year, because yeah, that's what used to happen year in, year out. And I think it's how do we change that? What do we do that? So I think rather than them sort of, you know, that your consultants rushing to book holidays because they feel they have to book them, surely we should be a little bit more intelligent and grown up about it, and maybe change the end of that holiday date to somewhere else in the year, so we don't have that problem now, when, you know, it is a huge problem, because it's I always think December is one of the best sales months of the year, because people are pushing to either get to the end of the year and therefore they're trying to spend a budget, or their final budget for Q1 next year. That's it, because the financial year ends at the end of Q1. So it's about how you maximize that. And to me, I'd want all my people, you know, in the fight now rather than taking holidays. So I'd look at how I'd change my holiday entitlement.
I think if you're having to put rollovers for holiday, Howard, though, you know, that's a retrospective action. Like that's something we should have thought about earlier on. So, you know, the idea that we're still in the same place where people get to the end of the year and they've got loads of holidays to use up, it's bonkers.
I was with three clients last week, and all had the same problem.
Yeah, I know it's true,
So
right? I know it's an
they
absolute
haven't
truth, and I
changed.
know the emergency solution is roll it over. But really, surely we should be thinking about getting people to spread their holiday out before we get to this time of year. We pretty much everybody on the call is pretty experienced, and it's just bonkers to me that that's the problem every year. It's like it's so easy to fix.
If you think
why
about
do we not focus on it?
But if you think about how busy people have been this year working in the business, those decisions out there, which might seem quite small and minuscule, have probably been left because that's working on the business. And it's only when it becomes now a critical sort of issue that they start to address it.
I think it's the same every year. I think it's a real shame that we don't prioritize it all the way through the year and we leave it till the end of the year.
Indeed, but we need to sort of look at it, and what we're talking about is looking at it now. It's Q4 or part way into Q4. We've got to start to look at it now because it's impacting us now. We need to make decisions now on that, I think, and then look at what happens for the rest of the year. If we looked at that, and then let's talk about Dave's comment earlier on. Recruitment agencies often have annual targets. They have a financial year. Neither of them sync. I've got clients that have got targets running from all different months, etc. So it's you're having to work out where we know December is one of the hardest months in recruitment. We know for reasons, there's the annual break, etc., etc., etc. So irrespective of your annual or your financial target, if you find your team are behind target, how do you drive them hard now without driving them into another recruiter's hands or another recruitment agency's hands?
Well, go back to what we were talking about last week. You don't drive them anywhere. You encourage them and you understand why they are where they are. You have that conversation with them, and then you try to say, and this obviously depends on cash flow and how your business is run, but just don't have that cliff edge of the end of December. If someone is, I don't know, pick a number, 72% to target, it's almost highly unlikely they're going to get somebody back onto target by the end of December, and that's maybe the end of the sales year. So why don't you acknowledge that, recognize that, and put steps in place to say, I tell you what, this is what we'd like you to do by the end of February. It may not get them all the way back onto where you want them to be, but if somebody is performing okay, you just want them to be better, then put some plans in place, because whilst you as a business owner or as a manager or as a team leader are going to be worried about them not being on target, if they've got any sense of themselves, they're also going to be worried. And they're going to be thinking about, oh, I'm going to finish the year at 72% or 80%. What does that mean for me? Should I be looking? There's lots of people out there, I know companies that have lost salespeople who are 60% of target, and they've had 5 offers of jobs at other companies. And the company that I know has said, well, they're useless. They're only 60% of target. Well, they may be not quite as useless as you think they are. It just may be a management or a coaching or a development issue, rather than let's just boot them out the door. So I would try to encourage us in those last 6.2 weeks or whatever it is to just have a slightly longer term conversation, so that December isn't the end of the year and the end of the target and the end of the focus. And for those where they are doing really well and they're 120% and that's the year end, then you celebrate them, but not at the detriment of those that are not doing as well.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think there's something in that, treating December differently, treating the end of year differently, because we've got an end of year and we've got our own targets, and we artificially create this extra load of pressure on people when, as you say, Dave, they know themselves whether they're doing well or not. And so I think it can be counterproductive to put extra pressure on.
Yeah.
And I think the key is understanding and explaining and learning and coaching at desk about the particular challenges of the end of the year in a supportive way. And I read a really interesting article this week about how in larger organizations, the people focus is moving towards retention rather than recruitment. And I think we've historically as an industry thought that the 60% person we can bin and replace and keep doing that, and there just aren't people to replace with. And so, you know, we do have to focus on what can we do to move our 60 percenters to 80 percenters rather than bin them and replace them. Because it's not an option. And so there is a danger with the artificiality of a December coming up, that we put pressure on people in a counterproductive way at the point at which they're the most vulnerable to being poached by our competitors. So that doesn't mean we take the foot off the gas, but it's the context and the way in which we do that in a supportive and coaching way that's focused on their improvement rather than pure, I think it's the word driving, is quite difficult. It's an old way of thinking, I think.
So if we think about that, we never have this conversation coming into Easter. We never have this conversation coming into August. But we know there's massive holidays in Easter and August, etc. But we never have these conversations. So to me, this is about how you motivate your staff, and what you two are talking about is exactly right. It's how you motivate your staff, because if your staff are taking their foot off the gas, then you need to really look at yourself and not them. It's you. It's how you're motivating. It's how you're managing them, looking at your management processes. And if you're in charge of those management processes and motivating your staff, then it's you that's the problem, not the staff if they're taking their foot off the target. And I think we've also got to look at it the other way, Dave, because I think what you said there, Dave, is absolutely right, 60%. So I always looked at my business in a very straightforward way, and I looked at this from a client point of view, and then I started to look at it as slightly as a consultant point of view. I looked at the 20-60-20 rule. So I knew 20% of my clients were cash cows and be absolutely massive, work with them, get them working. I knew 60% of my client base would be really good clients and will make good money out of them. And 20% would be dogs. And I need to either re-educate them to put them into the 60%, or I need to move away from them and stop working with them. If we did that with our consultants, the bottom 20%, the middle 60%, and the top 20%, they're your star performers. Get out of the way, get them on with it, move them. The 60% is where you make your money. So where you're 60% of target, you might actually be falling into that 60% if you draw the line correctly. And then you look at the lower 20%. Do they just need re-educating? Do they need to put into a different position before we even think about removing? We might just have them in the wrong position. And I've seen 2 clients in the last 2 or 3 months move people into different places, and they've absolutely blossomed. They were the right person for the business. They were just sat in the wrong chair. So sometimes, rather than just that knee-jerk reaction, you're at below X% of target, therefore you're out, here's your views, you've sometimes got to look at, do they actually have another opportunity in the business or not? Have I just got them sat in the wrong chair? There are times, absolutely, where you've got the wrong person in the wrong chair in the business. Remove those people, absolutely.
Yeah,
but there are times where we should think about it the other way around. So I think if the difference is in Q4, we are so hung up about Christmas and what's coming, it's the end of the year and a new year's dawning, that we change all our mindset on how we motivate and how we drive people. And it's go back to that drive, because we don't drive people into Easter. We don't drive people into the August holidays. We motivate them, we coach them, we develop them into there. It's the only way we get into Q4 do we seem to want to drive to get into the new year. And I think that's the change. So again, it's about change of terminology, change of focus, and change of mindset to be a growth mindset. And how we're going to grow out of this year and grow into the new year is really important. So sometimes I think it's the management and the managers need to look at themselves and how they're motivating. So as we've been talking about 2023, it is literally on the doorstep. 6 weeks, I hear Dave said. So this year's gone in the blink of the eye. Consultants are normally in one of 2 states. As Dave said, they're either finishing the year off the bang, or they're trying to hit their targets. And what we tend to find, if they finish the year with a bang, they're trying to push everything into this year because they'll be maximizing on the commission plans, etc., etc. Or if they're not, they might be sandbagging to go into next year, and therefore taking their foot off the gas. So how do we ensure performance remains high without creating that bar humbug atmosphere?
And I'm going to defer to Candice's answer on the chat, which is
yes,
make sure that you're having individual conversations with your consultants. Most of the people that Jump deals with we're in contact with about 150 different companies. Most of them have between 3 and 30 staff. There's some that are bigger and a few that are in startup mode, But that means that if you are an owner or running a business, you can create the time to have a very intelligent, useful time with your staff, with your individual consultants, and have those conversations in two ways. The most important way is the most important question: how are you today? And you've got to add the today bit to the how are you, and find out how they're doing personally before you have the business conversation. You know, spend time understanding what it is, where they're coming from, because anything like you talk about sandbagging and all of that sort of stuff, you know, people will be doing that if they're doing it for a reason, because they're saving for deposit for a flat, or because they're trying to pay for Christmas, or because they've got vet bills, or there'll be all sorts of reasons why they're doing what they're doing. But you'll only find that out if you take that personal approach about what's going on in your life. So if you don't know that, forget having conversations with them about driving business performance, because they're just not connected to you. So I would spend plenty of time between now and the end of the year. I think the end of the year, actually, Howard, is 8 weeks. I think it's 6 weeks. We've got to get some deals done or something in what we said. But just make sure you've booked plenty of time for one-to-one with your staff. And if you normally have an hour, make it an hour and a half, and spend 55 minutes on them as people and 35 minutes on the business, because I guarantee you'll find more about them as people that's important as you plan for next year, and understanding what's going on in their lives.
I couldn't agree more, Dave. You know, taking the time to create the personal approach, absolutely. I couldn't agree more.
So it's interesting.
We're running businesses, aren't we? All of us, including Jump. We're running businesses where we don't have hundreds of staff.
Yeah.
So, you know, if I was back at Spring when we had all those people, I couldn't have had 1,100 conversations. But
you could encourage your leadership team to have
it, and we can have it with our clients.
Yeah.
And I think it's interesting that this time of year we have that annual review. And we make it all about their annual performance, not about them as a person. And it's interesting when you sort of flip from, you know, that review process into mentoring. When I'm mentoring people, the first question I ask is, you know, as Dave said, you know, how are you today? But then it's, you know, what's on your mind? And once they start to tell you on your mind, and now what else is on your mind? What's the biggest challenge that you have? And those questions sometimes do not even talk about work. I might have an hour and a half mentoring session with somebody and I haven't even talked about work, because so many different things are actually on their mind and what's going on. And I think if people are taking their foot off the gas, or they're doing certain things, there's, as Dave said, there's a reason behind that. It's finding out that reason and then looking at them. If they're not performing to where you expect them to be, or they expect to be, what sits behind that? And I think, again, we're too knee-jerk on the actual figures, and we're not enough involved in the people and helping the people blossom. And they might be just a really good, steady away person, but we're looking for gold constantly. So maybe we're looking at that, but you know, we've got to sort of recharge that. And I think that sort of says that, you know, we've got to move our mentality away from review, which is 90% figures, and if mainly 10% about them, to be potentially the other way round. And I think you'll find you've got a far better outcome from your people when you look at it like that.
Can I just add to my point, Ad, about two questions that as a leader you could ask your people that they may be surprised that you ask them. And the two questions that are really important for me is the way that I manage you or lead you working for you?
Nice question.
As a leader, ask that question. And what can I do better for you? And that takes away all aspects of whether they're 30% or 130%. It focuses back on, what can I do to make you better? What am I doing that's helping you or that is hindering you? And find that out. And I think now's as good a time as any. You should be having those questions anyway, but towards the end of the year is a good time to have those conversations.
Yeah, and if you're still doing traditional appraisals and annual reviews that are figures-based, ditch them. Just replace them with a mentoring conversation. I think appraisals are awful. You know, we measure people to within an inch of their lives in this industry, you know, with our performance review as we go along. You don't need to do it again on an annual basis. Ditch it and have a mentoring conversation instead.
Yeah, there's a good topic there for a job webinar.
It's interesting, isn't it? Yeah, we go into if you go into a sporting background, they measure you again within an inch of your life, but they're not trying to push you beyond and beyond and beyond and beyond, because they know where your capabilities stop and start, and they know how much they can stretch you. And that's a different one, where we're expecting people, you build 200k this year, right? Next year you're going to build 400k. Yeah, well, sorry, it doesn't quite work like that. So we've got to start to look at it in that way. And that's why we start to look. So I'm going to sort of try finish this off as a one last question. And we may get another one in between this. So if you could give your leaders then, Dave, one piece of advice entering the final stage of 2022, and then to start 2023 off on the right foot, what would that be?
What are you doing to recharge yourself during this holiday season? What are you, please, I would just encourage people to please assume that most of your staff, most of them need to recharge. It's been a really busy year. We've had a tough couple of years because of all that's gone on. Politically and economically, we're in a crazy, turbulent time. So there's lots going on, and there'll be lots going on with their families, with their colleagues, with their friends. There's all sorts of stuff going on. But in business, actually, for the most part, recruitment is relatively buoyant. So in that maelstrom of everything that's going on outside of the office, I just want to know that the people that are working alongside me are spending some time recharging their batteries. Because December, most people are going to take some time off in December. I think Christmas Day is a Sunday this year. So, it may be that whole week that we technically lose in terms of being in the office and not working, or literally closing the laptop and not working at home. So I'd want to just find out what they're planning on doing. Because sometimes for some people, Christmas is a real stress because they've got to go and visit people, they've got to go and travel up and down the country. So actually, whilst we think, it's a time to recharge, for some people, it's like, oh my God, I don't want to do any of this. I want to get back to work. So therefore it's a worry for them. So find that out and see if you can address it in another way.
I think Heather and I discovered that last week, didn't we, Heather, that you really loved the Christmas break and all of that. And I find it the most
Howard and I, opposite ends of the scale when it comes to Christmas. Yeah. Whose house would you rather be at?
My mother's. But I'm not cooking.
Maybe we should all swap round. We should swap families. This could be a jump thing. I'll turn up at yours, Howard. You can turn up at mine.
Excellent. Yes, that would be fun.
What would your one piece of advice be then, Heather?
It's the 2 O's for me as we go into next year. So optimism. So despite everything that you're going to be hearing and seeing, just try to block it out and retain some optimism. Actually, next year could be a really exciting and interesting year filled with my second O, which is opportunity. So find your opportunity next year. Yeah, there's definitely one there.
I thought it was ooh. I thought you wanted a cup of tea, but no, opportunity and optimism. Yeah, from there. And I think I'm the same. Mine would be, look for growth this year, because if you start to look for growth, you will see the green shoots and you'll see the opportunity that you're looking at, Heather. But if you become blinkered to it, then you become blinkered to those opportunities, and therefore those opportunities never come. And I think sometimes when we get too blinkered, then we become very, very close to opportunities, and that's when things start to go wrong. We push people too hard, you lose performers, etc., etc. So I think we've got to be open to opportunities, and I think we've got to really set a growth mindset and look at how we can look for growth across our portfolio of clients, across our new clients, across our staff, and how we can best support them. And I think that's the common, is how we best support them as management and as leaders. Because if we can support our team, they'll support our clients, and our clients will support us, and it comes around in that circle again. Yeah. Ladies and gents, thank you very much. It's always an interesting webinar when we sort of get on board and we all sort of talk about what's going on and what's happening. Next week, we've got the last one on this series. And the next week, we're going to talk about the things that we've sort of touched on massively today. Incentives, what works, what motivates, and do your incentives actually create desire to actually perform for you as a business? And I think as we move into the end of the year and into the following year, if we're going to look for opportunity and we look for a growth mindset, incentives are going to be a real key part of that. So we look forward to seeing you all next week. Dave, Heather, thank you very much. As always, thank you for all your questions, ladies and gents. I hope you enjoyed it. Enjoy the rest of your week. I hope it's not too windy. See you all next week.
Thank you. Have a good week, everybody.
Bye.
Cheers, Heather. Cheers, Howard.
Cheers, Dave.